First, what I want to tell you is these individuals sleep all day and are up all night. All 13 of the victims, including the defendants, typically go to sleep around 4 or 5 in the morning, sleep all day, and then be up all through the night. The victims report that as a punishment, starting many years ago, they began to be tied up. First with ropes. One victim at one point was tied up and hog-tied. And then when that victim was able to escape the ropes, these defendants eventually began using chains and padlocks to chain up the victims to their beds. These, as I said, these were a form of punishment meted out on these children and these adults. These punishments would last for weeks or even months at a time. The evidence is that 3 victims were chained up at the time the police first knocked on the door at the home in Paris. The defendants were able to get 2 of the victims unchained before the police actually entered. An 11 and 14-year-old were unchained as the police stood at the door, while a 22-year-old remained chained to a bed when the police entered the home. Circumstantial evidence in the house suggests that the victims were often not released from their chains to go to the bathroom. The 17-year-old victim that escaped had been working on a plan with her siblings to escape this abuse for more than 2 years. She escaped through a window and took one of her siblings with her. That sibling eventually turned back, became frightened and turned back, and went back into the house. The neglect and abuse started when the family lived in the Fort Worth area of Texas, with the parents at one point living apart from most of the children and dropping off food from time to time. The defendants lived in Texas for 17 years. In 2010, they moved to Murrieta, California, and in 2014 moved to their current residence in Paris, California, both, of course, in Riverside County. The abuse and severe neglect intensified over time and intensified as they moved to California. All the victims have now been examined by doctors and medical professionals. All the victims were and are severely malnourished. Specifically, severe caloric malnutrition associated with muscle wasting. To give you an example, one of the children at age 12 is the weight of an average 7-year-old. The 29-year-old female victim weighs 82 pounds. Several of the victims have cognitive impairment and neuropathy, which is nerve damage as a result of this extreme and prolonged physical abuse. None of the victims were allowed to shower more than once a year. I want to give you a quick example. One of the reasons for and this is all alleged conduct, I do want to mention that. One of the reasons for these punishments of being chained up to a bed were that, and by the way, the punishments included frequent beatings and even strangulation. One of the reasons for the punishments were if the children were found to wash their hands above the wrist area, they were accused of playing in the water, and they would be chained up. None of the victims have seen a doctor in more than 4 years. None of the victims have ever seen a dentist. The children were, when they were not chained up, locked in different rooms and fed very little on a schedule. They were not allowed to have toys, although there were many toys found in the house that were in their original package and had never been opened. Supposedly homeschooled, the children lack a basic knowledge of life. Many of the children didn't know what a police officer was. The 17-year-old, when asked if there was medication or pills in the home, didn't know what medication or pills were. About the only thing the children were allowed to do in their rooms or chained up was to write in journals We now have recovered those journals, hundreds of them, and we are combing through them for evidence. One other thing, the parents would apparently buy food for themselves and not allow the children to eat it. They would buy food, including pies, apple pies, pumpkin pies, leave it on the counter, let the children look at it, but not eat the food. It's a very complex case. It's important that we gather and analyze this evidence. Based on the information I've shared with you today, it's my hope that members of the public will come forward with any information about this family or these crimes that could aid us in this ongoing investigation and case. If anyone out there has additional information, please call Senior Investigator Wade Walsvik at 951-955-5400.